What's up, Canucks fans? It is Parker, and welcome to Parker's Pucks. It is an off day today, so going to do a little bit of a different vlog. We're going to be answering a question, and that question is, can the Canucks win the North Division? Not will they, but can they, and what would it take to do so? Now, to start, the answer is yes. They can, technically. A lot needs to go right, though. So I've got 4 things here that I'm going to go over that I think are the keys to the Canucks winning the North Division and beating teams like Toronto, Edmonton, Montreal, and so on. The first key is health. The Canucks have been a notoriously unhealthy team in the past, and in this tight season, it's going to be harder than ever to stay healthy. So every team is going to be struggling with injuries, most likely, potentially COVID issues. So sort of two strands to go off of there. The first one being injuries. Like I said, other teams are going to get injured. So if you can have less injuries than them, or have your star players be less injured than Toronto star players, then that's a good place to start, right? If you're able to stay healthy, which again, this is mostly a luck thing. If the Canucks can stay healthy, then that could give them a leg up on other teams and potentially give them a shot at winning the division. The other strand of that is COVID, right? If the Canucks, say, had a few players get COVID, like the Dallas Stars just had, where they are now losing the first week of their season, that means your schedule gets compressed even tighter because they have to fit those 3 or 4 games that get postponed and fit them into the schedule somewhere else in hopes that, you know, all of your games can be played. And if you're playing more games and more nights, 1, you're more tired, and 2, you're more likely to get injured. And that goes back into this first strand of physical health. So kind of 2 things to look at there. That you need to stay healthy if you want a shot at winning this division, because it's close. And that's one of those things that, everything else being equal, a team being healthy can put them over the top in this division. Key number 2, goaltending. The Canucks had good goaltending last year. That's a fact. Jacob Markstrom was a very good goalie. Obviously, signing him to 6 years wasn't something the Canucks could really do, with Demko pushing up for a spot. So signing Holtby to that 2-year deal at under $9 million, 4.3 per, definitely is a decent stopgap for the next 2 years. But Holtby needs to be more than a stopgap. He has been elite in the past. Obviously, he won the Cup with the Caps a few years back, and he was excellent. Last year and the year before, he wasn't excellent. He's regressed quite a bit. I think he was down to sort of a mid to bottom tier goalie last year, and he needs to be better than that if he wants to, you know, at least play some games. Thatcher Demko's the other side of this coin. Obviously elite in the bubble last year, that series against Vegas where he put up like a 975. He was unbelievable, but that's obviously not sustainable, right? He's not going to put up a 975 in a 56-game season. There's just no way. But if he's able to be a good goalie, I don't want to say excellent or great. He needs to be good. He needs to be slightly above league average. If he can put up like a 912, then I think the Canucks are in a decent spot. Especially if him and Holtby combined can put up like a 910 and be league average, I think that's good enough. There's going to be a lot of offense and not a lot of defense in this division, I'm pretty sure. Most of these teams' defenses aren't great, and lots of them have sort of high-flying offenses and not great goalies all around, right? If you want to win the division, you're competing with Freddie Anderson, basically, for Toronto, because Toronto's most likely to be that team, and Jack Campbell as their backup, right? So kind of a similar situation where you have the Anderson and Holtby are 2 guys who are very good, maybe not as good as they once were, and then Campbell and Demko both being young guys, unproven to the point where you aren't ready to make them starters. Obviously, Campbell is well below Anderson, but you need to, you know, the goaltending needs to be good enough to the point where it doesn't sink you, and that's all it needs to do. Key number 3 is the power play. Needs to perform as good as it did last year. Remember, we're not talking about making the playoffs. We're talking about winning the division. That power play needs to be popping off. Last year was a top 5 power play in the NHL. It needs to be that again. And I think it's doable. If you look at Power Play 1, which we reviewed in our line overview video on Friday, check that out up in the corner here. Click on the card, and it'll take you to that. That Power Play number 1 looks really good, where you have the 1-3-1 set up. You have Hughes on the point. You have Miller and Pettersson sort of on the sides, so they can sort of shift up and back as the play moves and rotate around Hughes, basically. You have Horvat in the middle spot, where he is excellent. He scored quite a few goals last year, just sitting in the middle and just getting a quick shot off on a pass from Brock Besser, who will be down behind the net, making the plays out to Horvat, being able to cut around and make a quick shot, and just grinding in the corners. Now, Power Play 2, I think, can be also really good if Travis Green goes all in. And that's something I also mentioned on that Friday video, where I think the best thing to do for the power play would be basically take Hughes off the ice and put Schmidt in that spot on the second power play, and then leave Pettersson there, right? You can have Pearson, or you can have Höglander and Gaudette and Pearson as sort of this, basically the second line, Gaudette taking Horvat's spot because Horvat's on the first PP, and then replacing, instead of having 2 D-men like most teams do on their second power play, leave Pettersson there. Elias Pettersson has such a good shot, so treat him like Alex Ovechkin. Put him in that spot to just keep ripping one-timers the whole game. Why not? It would be such a boon to a second power play unit to have a guy like Elias Pettersson, who doesn't need to do a lot of skating for this 2 minutes, right? You can leave him there. He can just keep shooting the entire time. So if the power play can be as good as it was last year, then again, it's one of those things where it's not going to ruin you, and you need all of these things to work together if you want to win the division. My fourth and final key to winning the division is beating the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Toronto Maple Leafs are going to most likely be the best team in this division. That's what most people are predicting. That's what I predict, that the Toronto Maple Leafs will win the North Division. So let's ignore the other teams for a moment, the Calgarys, the Edmontons, the Winnipegs, all of them. Let's ignore them and think about which games the Canucks need to win. Now, most people will say, well, you got to beat Ottawa every chance you play them. And that's fair, right? They're a bad team. You want to win 7, 8 of the 9 games against them, ideally, because they're your best chance at getting points, right? Those are the free spot on the bingo card. You got to take those. But where the points really matter is against Toronto, because if you're trying to win the division, that means you're placing ahead of Toronto, right? If you want to win the division, those games matter the most. Because let's say you play Ottawa. Let's say you lose to the Ottawa Senators. You didn't get any points tonight, and Ottawa did. But Ottawa's not winning the division. They're not making the playoffs, most likely. So them getting 2 points doesn't really factor in to the calculation. But if you're playing against Toronto 9 times in one season, and you lose a game to Toronto, not only did you not get any points, but they did. They pushed their advantage. They now are 2 points ahead, farther of you than they were in the morning. And, you know, normally around the NHL, you could go play, maybe you're playing Columbus, Toronto's playing Buffalo, you lose, Toronto loses, doesn't matter. But you're playing Toronto 9 times. You have to beat them like 6 times at least. Now think about the math here. If the Canucks win 6 and the Leafs win 3 of that head-to-head matchup, then that's a 6-point difference, right? You're getting 12 points from those games. Toronto's only getting 6. That is a 6-point gap just from winning a couple extra games against them. Those games are so valuable if you want to win the division and have home ice through the first round of the playoffs, through the second round of the playoffs, all the way into the semifinals. That's your key. You need to beat Toronto every time you play them if you can, because they are the team you're competing with if you want to win the division. So those are my 4 keys. You got health, goaltending, power play needs to be elite, and you got to beat Toronto if you want to take Toronto's spot. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Hit subscribe, hit like, hit dislike if you didn't like it. I don't care. Come follow me on Twitter. just come hang out. We're doing post-game recaps all year. The channel's been, in my mind, kind of blowing up a little bit lately, which is really cool. It's really cool to have all you new people here. So thank you all for subscribing. Thanks for hanging out. And it's going to be a super fun season. Go Canucks go. I can't wait to spend it with you guys.